This is Vitamix's most basic blender. It has zero bells and whistles, but maybe you don't need them. I've owned the Vitamix E310, also known as the Explorian, for almost 5 years, and this video will cover the pros and cons, plus an alternative if you're still on the fence. First up, I think the most important thing to mention about this particular model is the size. If you're considering the E310, I'm guessing you're in a smaller household, or you need a low profile container. This model comes with a smaller 1.4 litre container. Most Vitamixes have a 2 litre container, but if you're looking to make smoothies for just 1 or 2 people, you might find 2 litres overkill. Basically, you need to put enough ingredients into the container for the Vitamix to be able to blend properly. A smoothie for 1 person in a 2 litre container probably won't even reach a third of the way up. In terms of how they work, something that surprised me is that the blades on a Vitamix aren't sharp, they're blunt. So it's not the sharpness of the blades that pulverizes the ingredients, it's the speed and power of the motor. The blades create a vortex by pulling ingredients down into the center of the container. If you don't have enough ingredients, the Vitamix can't create that vortex and blend properly. I'm not saying it's impossible to blend smaller amounts, but you'll probably have an easier job of it in a smaller container like this one. I find that this size is perfect for 2 people. I rarely make a smoothie just for me, but when I do, it's fine. This is a 1-person strawberry and banana smoothie, and it fits nicely into a 30 centilitre glass. In terms of the actual dimensions of the blender itself, when I bought the E310, I needed it to fit under a countertop. I've since moved it, but even though there's nothing above it anymore, I'd still get this model again because of the size of its container. I'll run through the pros quickly. I don't want to spend too long talking about how it blends because, unsurprisingly, it blends brilliantly. What I would like to talk about is how I find it in general, just as a home cook, and as someone who uses it to make smoothies 99% of the time. I don't make soup or nut butter. I tried hummus and the first batch didn't go that well, but that was user error. The second time around, I added more liquid, used the tamp, and it was perfect. The texture was gorgeous. It's the same for smoothies. Something I came across repeatedly when I read reviews, and I read a lot of reviews, is that some people find that the E310 struggles with frozen fruit. I've never had this issue. The ingredients are supposed to be added in this order: liquids, dry things like seeds, nuts or powders, leafy greens, fruit and veg, then ice or frozen ingredients. I think that stuck with me because although I don't consciously think about it, I do put frozen things in last and it's always been fine. Another thing to mention is how well this Vitamix deals with tough ingredients. I tend to think of smoothies as fruit-based, but something I often make in this blender is a carrot smoothie, and it blends carrots really well. I almost feel like I'm drinking juice, but really I'm consuming the entire carrot, including all of the fibre. Dates, nuts and seeds blend really well too. If you get pitted dates like I do, just give them a squeeze to check for stones, because I have found some before, even though they're not supposed to be there. I wouldn't want to blend them if I could help it. I quite like adding a handful of cashews to fruit smoothies. They add some fat to balance the carbs, but they taste completely neutral. I once added red skin peanuts to a smoothie, and they didn't taste good to me, but that's just a personal preference. It's really easy to clean. I used to put hot water and a drop of detergent into the container and run it, but now I just chuck it in the dishwasher on the bottom rack multiple times per week on an eco wash, and I think it's held up really well in terms of cloudiness. A lot of these scratches and cloudy bits that you can see, they happened before I started putting it in the dishwasher, which is what made me think I might as well use the dishwasher. It saves me having to wash it up. So to quickly summarise, this is a good size for 1 or 2 people. It blends brilliantly, it makes great smoothies, and the cleanup is easy. Okay, on to the cons. I would say that the main con is that it's loud. It is so loud. At the moment, I'm mostly blending on speed 6 out of 10 because that is as loud as I can bear it without wearing ear protection, and I still get a good smoothie. Any higher than speed 6, and I'm not kidding, I wear ear defenders. I have tinnitus, and if you know, you know. So I try to take care of my ears, and I always carry small ear defenders with me, just on my keys. They've saved me so many times, especially in cinemas. These are Alpine party plugs. I'll put a link to them in the description. They cost about 10 quid. It's a no-brainer. I knew the E310 was going to be loud because loads of reviews mention the noise, and one person even returned it because they worried about upsetting their neighbours. No one's complained to me, but if I just show you my neighbour's house across the back, when it's summer and they're in their garden and I've got all my windows open, they can hear my Vitamix. I mean, I can hear them vacuum, or if they do any DIY, sometimes I hear that. So it's not a big deal, but I just want to give an idea of how far the noise can travel. I'm in a terraced house with reasonably thick walls, and my neighbours either side of me have never complained. Okay, next con, the lid. And for ages, I thought it was just me or that I got a slightly too big lid, because I find it surprisingly hard to get onto the container. I happened to mention it in the review I wrote for my blog, and a lovely gentleman called Keith from near the Netherlands got in touch to say that he and his wife have the same issue. So it's not just me. What I tend to do is put the container on my bench on a table mat so I don't spoil the wood, line up the lid and push down, just almost like a chest compression. It helps if the lid is wet, but I don't usually bother. And this technique works really well for me, but absolutely no one in the reviews mentioned the lid being an issue. So it might just be me, Keith and Keith's wife. A few years ago, my mum wanted me to recommend a high-powered blender for her, and because of the lid, I didn't recommend the E310. I've mentioned before in another video that my mum has mild arthritis in her hands, and I just really felt like she would struggle with the lid. So that is just something to bear in mind if you have any mobility or strength issues with your hands. I'll talk more about the blender I recommended to her in a bit. Another thing that used to be a con for me is the handle. It's clear and hollow, and it's annoying to dry up if water gets in, especially if you have hard water and you care about the appearance of the container. Honestly, I don't give it a second thought anymore, but if you're on the fussier side like I can be, I just wanted to mention it. The warranty. Vitamix is a bit stingy with the warranty on the E310. You get 5 years, but other models get 7 or even 10 years. It wasn't a deal breaker for me, and I've seen nothing to indicate that it's struggling as it's coming up to its 5th birthday, but we'll see how it goes. I mentioned in my blog review that replacement containers are on the pricey side, but to be honest, and touch wood, it is hard to imagine needing one. I haven't dropped the container, but it feels robust and the plastic feels really thick. I feel like I'm gonna drop it now and need to get a new one. If I did, it would give me a reason to buy this container. I only recently discovered it thanks to the Vitamix subreddit, and I thought it was a joke at first. I think it's good for hot foods like soup, but I don't really think you can get it in the UK, or it's only available on Amazon, and it costs almost as much as buying a brand new E310. I just think it would look so cool in my kitchen and be great for all the soups I don't make. Onwards. And this leads nicely into the potential alternative to the E310. I mentioned at the beginning that there are no bells or whistles here. There is an on-off switch, a pulse switch, and a dial. That is it. No power button, no timer, definitely no phone app. When I researched this model, I didn't care one bit that it doesn't have a timer. Now that I've owned it and experienced just how loud it is, I would love to be able to turn it on, crank it up to 10, run away and have it turn itself off. This blender lets you do that. This is the Blendtec Classic 575 with a 4-side jar. It's the blender I recommended to my mum, and the container is a bit smaller. It's 32 ounces compared to 48 on the E310. But the lid is so easy to get on and off as it's quite shallow. You can run it for 60 or 90 seconds and it turns itself off. Weirdly, it has a counter that increments every time you use it. Apparently it's a carryover from when Blendtec made commercial blenders, and it was to do with the warranty, but it's now quite a popular feature. People like to know how many smoothies they've made. Anyway, Having used both, there's not much between them. I like Blendtec's lid, but I prefer the Vitamix container. The plastic feels a bit thicker to me. Both blenders are loud Howards. Everyone leaves the room when the Blendtec is doing its thing, and we return once it's done. You only get a 2-year warranty with it though, which is way more stingy than Vitamix. The other Blendtec models have better warranties, as long as you don't buy from Amazon. If you do, they cap it at 2 years. Back to the E310, stuff to be aware of. Some people have said that it's walked across their countertop when blending. I've never experienced this, not once. The base is really heavy. The container drops straight onto the base. There's no clicking or locking it into place, it is a loose connection. When you start to blend, the container shifts slightly to the right. I thought I had a defective blender when I first saw this, but it's fine and it's normal. There is purposely no locked on connection because it would cause wear and tear on the parts, and you shouldn't hold the container in place to stop the shift. So that is just a heads up, as I wasn't expecting it. In terms of using different containers, I contacted Vitamix because I'd read some conflicting information online. They told me that the E310 is a classic C-series model, so any C-series container is compatible. If you wanted to get the bigger 2-litre classic container, that would work. I will put a list up of all the compatible containers. There are quite a few. In conclusion, it's basic, but it blends so well, and I've found workarounds for the loudness and the stiff lid. All my reviews end with the same question. If this broke tomorrow, would I replace it like for like? That's a tough one. It works really well for me, and I have no plans to buy a new blender. They are expensive. But if it broke, I would probably at least check out Blendtec's offerings. I like the size of their containers, the timer, and the lid. In terms of noise, I don't think any high-powered blender is quiet. I've owned 2 NutriBullets and they were horrendously loud. So I have no issue recommending the E310. The size for our household of 2 people is perfect. But if you think that the lid might cause you trouble, or if you want to be able to blend on full power, walk away and have it turn itself off, take a look at Blendtec. The last thing I want to touch on, which I think is something to consider when buying a blender like this, Vitamix, Blendtec, whatever, is that it's kind of an investment in your health, assuming that you actually use it. It's not just that it'll increase your fruit and veg intake. For me, it's all the other bits too. I add psyllium husk, flax seeds, chia seeds, maca root powder, sometimes protein powder, kefir, all of these fibrous, nutritious things that I probably wouldn't consume if I didn't make smoothies. Of course, you could add all of these to a NutriBullet or cheaper blender, but the NutriBullets just didn't have the longevity for me, and I get a smoother result with my Vitamix, even just on speed 6, which is really what you want when you're blending seeds, nuts and vegetables. Okay, end of review. Let me know if you have any questions or if I missed anything, and I'll put a link to some smoothie and vegetable juice recipes in the description. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.